speaking of products that stink in the NBA, All-Star Weekend was this past weekend, and everyone had their own think pieces on the NBA side of how can we fix this? How can we, whatever, right? And I mean, this discourse on the men's side has been going on about ratings and everything. Gray, you were there. Like, how was your experience?
Pretty positive, I would say. Like San Francisco, we talked about San Francisco on this pod recently. They cleaned up their act and got it together for the weekend. Lots of WNBA players made cameos in many different places.
Some players didn't.
Most notably, one did not. And I'm riding with her till the wheels fall off for that. Honestly, see me on my turf type time. I love it. But all in all, yeah, I think it was cool and a pretty, like, in terms of like the format of the actual league events. A great what not to do for the WNBA.
Yes.
What not to do for the W. So
yes.
I hope they're watching their male counterparts and doing some social listening, and do not bring that to Indianapolis this summer.
Please don't, because that was bad. But I bring that up to pose the question of for WNBA All-Star. I mean, frankly, I think it's been a pretty great couple years of All-Star stuff. Like whether the Team USA stuff this past time, Sabrina's 3-point competition on the W side, like when she set the record, like it's been a pretty good stretch, honestly, of All-Stars. But just in the spirit of discourse and the conversation, I was wondering, what are, and you can go either way with this, the best or the worst ideas that the WNBA could possibly bring to All-Star? I know the first thing that came to mind to me, put Twitter commenters in a 1v1 tournament against WNBA players. Whether that be WNBA fans that are talking about players, don't put me in it. Don't do that. But like, whether it be fans, whether it be people that are still not on the women's hoops train and are still just assholes, like let's just put them on the court. Let's hoop, and I think that would be absolutely hilarious. A little Pro versus Joe moment, and just let them hoop. Like let's just see what would happen. But I'm interested for you guys, Andrew. I know you had one already loaded up for this. I'll let you go first on this one, and what your idea for WNBA All-Star is.
Okay, so I don't like the gimmicks of the NBA All-Star.
No gimmicks? What?
I like, look.
Me, I hate gimmicks.
Maybe I'm just too old. Maybe YouTube is gonna throttle this because I criticize Mr. Beast, but like, I don't see it. It feels like they are trying to appeal to folks that are on TikTok and Instagram Reels by and large. And to be completely honest, those kids aren't watching for the whole span of time. Like they're going to get what they get via highlights that are going to show up in short form content. So to me, don't even fuck with that stuff because the kids aren't going to care. Like the audience you are reaching is not going to want to see it live any more than they would if they just got it the next morning or 5 minutes later in a TikTok, right? So I think the gimmicks are bad. However, if you wanted to do something really fun and like funky and different for All-Star Weekend, Kim Mulkey fashion show. Give me the
sequins and everything, like
fits over the years, best and worst, and give me every runway adjacent WNBA star. Give me Angel Reese, give me Cam Brink, Rakia, Aja, everyone who has like ever dreamed of doing the Paris runway, and that could be like if you do like a one-on-one tournament. The winner gets to pick the loser's Kim Mulkey fit.
That's wicked.
And it's like, so like Asia goes out and does a one-on-one against, like I'll use the All-Star Mendoza line. Like Asia goes out against Kayla McBride in an All-Star 1v1 tournament and Asia wins. and she says Kayla McBride has to model Kim Mulkey's fit with the top that's a hoop. Like that to me gives you stakes in the one-on-one. It's fun, it's goofy, it's viral, and I feel like the players would kind of enjoy it. Like I feel like you could find a way to make this fun for people. And whatever people think about Kim Mulkey's individual politics is one thing, but the fits are consistent. And maybe you expand that past Kim Mulkey's fits. Like maybe it's like every coach's fit. You have to pick a coach's fit for the loot. Like you pick a Dawn Staley fit. You pick a Jeff Walls fit. Like, you know, like just a tracksuit.
I'm about to say, is it just
tracksuit? That's it. You know, someone's got to model like a Sydney Carter fit. Like, just get, you know, give me something that adds stakes that are fun. Coach fashion show. That's my best.
There we go.
My worst USA versus world. We don't need to get there yet.
Yeah, no, we don't need that.
Years, we might. And I'm also of the mindset, you know, and I feel this way about the men's side too. I don't really care if like the 15th through 20th American loses out on All-Star if it means I get a better game out of it. You know, and I don't think the league should care that much about it either. I think within the next Olympic cycle, we can reasonably do USA versus world and it actually be close. You know, like when we get to like say 2027-ish and like you've got, you know, Gabby Williams and Malonga, like you have like a chunk of the French team. You have some members of the UK team, like Camilla will be representing Brazil for the world team, right? Mm-hmm. I don't know if Aaliyah Boston represents Team USA or if it's USVI for her, but like she at USVI could like reasonably be in the world.
Aaliyah Edwards with Canada.
You could end up, you know, there's a lot of really good players that you could factor in the years ahead. I just don't think you could do it yet or now.
Yeah.
John Paul Jones, Bahamian, same deal. Put her on the world team.
Yeah.
No,
yeah.
Didn't John Paul play for Bosnia?
Yes.
World.
Yes, but still.
We are the world.
No, we are the world. Greer, do you have any suggestions? Or
I mean, I gotta get because like in the midst of all this, right? Still, like the most relevant hoops conversation in the last week has been the unrivaled 1v1 tournament. Mm-hmm. So my dream scenario is nobody who's an all-star, certainly no one who's a number one pick overall at guard is allowed to duck 1v1.
Who could you be?
I don't care what circumstance. I don't want to hear none of that. If you're an all-star, you got to get out here 1v1. Now we can break it up. We can do bigs versus guards. We could tweak it a little bit from what we got at Unrivaled, but I don't want to see a number one pick overall not playing at a guard in particular, not playing 1v1. Like that is just sacrilegious. What happened to the game I love is mandatory for All-Star Weekend in Indy if 1v1 ends up being a thing. I also really love De'Erica Hamby's comments on All-Star Weekend. I don't know if that was exclusive to the NBA and saying like, let's condense it, make it 2 days instead of 3 days.
Yeah.
But I like that. I like that idea a lot, right? Like, yes, you want to be celebrated for the season that you've had up until that point, but it's also important for players to have an opportunity to like recharge and stuff like that. So I really liked her idea of a condensed All-Star Weekend. WNBA is already 2 days only, right? And Friday and Saturday typically.
Yeah, normally.
So yeah, I like this idea a lot. It gives obviously still like the fans a ton of face time and stuff to do, but also, you know, protects the players a little bit too.
Yeah. I think the only other thing I could think of, and I'm not exactly sure like how this would be done directly, but anything just continuing to build like the college aspect and like the connection we've seen now with the preseason games, whether that's getting like college coaches involved, you know, and like maybe it's like Don and Gino coach the All-Star game one year, or like, you know, it's like whatever that could be. Like, I think there's some cool elements that you could bring in with that. You know, obviously not every city that is going to be hosting an All-Star has like, you know, kind of one of those dominant programs like near them, but finding different ways to just continue to build that bridge, whether it's having college players involved, you know, in All-Star stuff, you know, with whether it be NIL or however that kind of works. But I think the more that they can continue to build that bridge in whatever kind of form that takes, and especially, I mean, again, during the summer, bring college faces back in. They're kind of out of the loop at that point, like once you're you know, mid-July, right? So like at that point, you haven't seen these college players in a minute. Like they've kind of had their time to
unless you're Flage and Page.
Right, then you're everywhere. But
Yeah.
but that was dope. Like seeing them all around, like courtside and everything. Like Paige is sitting next to Swoops, and it's like seeing the generations cross over in that way, and then like who is, I mean, immediately about to come next, you know, and is, you know, presumably going to be on this stage. So like again, just as much crossover as you can potentially get, even if that's just something for socials, because like the way that the motion that it is on socials and continue just to boost that, like I feel like it's wins across the board to do that, and whatever kind of form that takes. It doesn't have to be like immediate participation, but even just being there. And I mean, there was a decent amount of players that were around, like even like just walking around like kind of the fan areas and stuff like that. Several friends at No Cap Space were there. I remember seeing Sanaya, I remember seeing Talia there, obviously Paige and Flauge as well. So like there's plenty of players around. How can we get them more involved during it would be super cool. But yeah, that's the W.
I would like to say before we go,
yeah,
I want to amend my pick because I'm coming around on USA versus World.
Okay, hold on.
Already. I'm coming around. I want to just read it off. Like All-Stars or fringe All-Star level players in the W that played internationally or played in the 2024 Olympics. Alana Smith, Bebic, both Sabalis. Not Niara wasn't an All-Star this year, but like fully healthy. She has All-Star ceiling. Satu is an All-Star when healthy. Misamin, if she comes to the league, is 1,000,000,000,000,000% an All-Star. Gabby Williams obviously came afterward, so like we had a limited sample size, but like she's right in that range, in that realm and range. You have Camilla as the 6'7" big. You know, I'm coming. Ezzy Magbagor's in here too. She's an All-Star level player. I'm Jonquel again, as we mentioned, whether it be for one place or another. I'm coming around on this concept here, man. I feel like, again, maybe not immediately, but I feel like we're getting very close to this being a legitimate possibility where it can be competitive.
Yeah.
The guards are where we are.
Just throw Marine in there into an All-Star game and let's see what happens.
Dude, like, fly Marine Johannes solely for All-Star. Like she gets to be the WNBA's like IG baddie, where it's just like come out for
that's their Mac McClung. That's Marine is Mac.
For the skills challenge.
Yeah, that's Mac. But no, I mean, I think, you know, to your point, like by the time that the next Olympic cycle comes around, like you could do, instead of Team USA versus WNBA, you could easily do World by then. And that's, you know, and there's still players that I don't like you didn't even really get to like that, and who knows who could be coming up, who's come over to the W by then. Like there's a whole bunch of different factors that can play into that. But yeah, I mean, I think there's also just generally a higher chance for the WNBA All-Star game to remain good, because if you offer money, they don't have the contracts that the NBA players do. Like, frankly, you know, so like when you're playing for, like, I mean, we just heard Fee talk about it. Like, she just made her WNBA contract worth of money by winning this 1v1 tournament. You know, so like if you're able to offer that caliber of money, where like, you know, you essentially double your earnings for a season. Like that's legit incentive there to go out there and really hoop.
One thing I'll add before I wrap on my side is like, I think there is less of a concern about like getting cooked online than there is in the NBA. You know, to me, I think a huge component with like why people say, oh, you know, why do people care so much less about the All-Star game than they did in past years? I think a lot of dudes are like worried about giving effort and then getting cooked by someone on the other side of the floor and having to live that down online for the entirety of All-Star weekend. And I think there's just less fear of that in the W, which I really appreciate. And so to me,
I know exactly.
Shout out to Stewie for volunteering as tribute and just taking one on the chin against Leah Edwards because she got smoked.
Mm-hmm. And took it and like legitimately took it on the chin. But I think, Andrew, that honestly kind of comes into play with, and Greer, you can attest to this, when we were at Overtime Select. Like, this is something that is like happening, like the understanding of your participation as a girls and women's basketball player, like kind of like we saw this at the high school level where there's just such an understanding. And I think like, because we're at this boom in women's basketball from a viewership perspective, but I still think there's a genuine appreciation for the coverage as well, and understanding that if there is an opportunity to do something that brings eyes, there is a willingness to do so. And we saw it. I mean, like I said, really, we directly heard it, like with the overtime comparing the high school boys to the girls. Like the girls are just down. Like, they'll, you got a question? Ask. Fire. Yeah. You want to do an interview?
And also just like the willingness to do it, right? Like,
absolutely.
Olivia Edwards won at Overtime Select the court. Right?
They played 1v1 there, and they were not afraid. Like, so like this is something that is like legitimately like I feel like kind of almost like generationally like kind of ironed into women's basketball players, and I love it, and I think every sign points to more innovation because of the willingness.
Well, and the thing with that too, and we talked about it on the Sunday show, and this can kind of help segue back into the college stuff.
Yeah.
That's a top-down thing, because one of the things I credit Gino and Dawn with is the fact that they have an OG's understanding about what this game needs, and that's why they schedule each other. That's a hold. Like, Gino has that. Like, that's a holdover from the earliest ages of basketball coaches, whether it be Leon Barmore at Louisiana Tech, Marianne Stanley at Old Dominion, Pat Summitt at Tennessee. They all scheduled each other because they knew that the only way to push the brands forward was to not duck smoke. And Gino and Dawn, I think, like, Gino's on the older end. Dawn's still 54. She's going to have at least a decade more of coaching if she wants it. But they have an understanding. And now you've got Kim Caldwell, 37 years old or so, who also feels the same way and is scheduling tough at Tennessee out of conference because they know that that's what people want. They know that the gaming of the system matters in as much as we have an allegiance to the broader portion of the game to grow that out. And I think the men's game doesn't really have that because it doesn't need it so much anymore. But I think the women's game is still in such a growth period that the biggest names in the sport at the college and the pro level still feel that desire and still feel that allegiance to do it. And as you said, that trickles down to the players, that trickles down to the Overtime Select kids and the high school kids. And you are ingraining an idea in them of when you match up good on good, you are representing something more than just yourself. And I think there is a concept of ownership there that's really important. And that's, it's dope to see that still builds with the next generation of kids. But that starts and stops with legendary coaches, doing stuff like saying, we're doing this game in February because we want everyone to see us and everyone to see our sport and our game in that way.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. I mean, shout out to women's basketball, the innovators.